Hey, welcome to The Explainer. We're going to talk about something you probably handle every single day, but never really think about. I'm talking about the stuff in your wallet and the invisible company that makes it all secure. It's this whole industry hiding right there in plain sight, and today, we're going to pull back the curtain.
Okay, so what do things like your passport, your credit card, and even those little tax stamps on a bottle all have in common? It's a bit of a riddle, right? I mean, yeah, they all have to be super secure, totally tamper-proof, and 100% trustworthy. But who's actually making them that way? The answer, well, it's probably not who you think.
So your first guess might be some government agency, right? But that's not quite it. Not directly anyway. The real tech, the actual manufacturing that goes into these incredibly important items, that usually comes from one super specialized kind of company. You can think of them as the unseen guardians of our identities and our money.
And a perfect example of one of these companies is PT Josuindo Triga Perkasa, or let's just call them JTPE. They are one of the major players working behind the scenes, making sure all your most important cards and documents are kept safe and sound. So how exactly does a company even get into a business like this? I mean, you don't just decide to start printing passports one day. Let's dig into their story a little bit.
All right, so JTPE actually started back in 1990, and they were just a general printing company, making things like business forms. Pretty standard stuff. But then things started to get interesting. In 2002, they went public on the stock exchange. That was a big deal. But the real game changer, that came in 2013. They formed a joint venture specifically for high-tech stuff like e-passports, and that was the moment they really pivoted from just paper and ink to the world of high-tech security, a move that honestly shaped everything that came next.
And that pivot really brings us to what they do today. On the surface, you might think, okay, it's just printing, but it's actually a tale of two completely different worlds. So on one side, you've got their non-security stuff. Think business invoices, sticky notes, promotional calendars. You get the idea, simple. But then you have the other side of their business, the high-stakes world of security products. And this is a whole different ballgame. We're not just talking about ink on paper here. This stuff requires special government permits, crazy advanced materials, and some serious anti-counterfeiting tech. This is where their real expertise is, and frankly, where the real value is.
And just look at the range of what they do. This is what makes them so crucial. They've got the document tech down for things like passports and diplomas. They handle card technology for SIM cards and credit cards. They're doing label tech for those high-security tax stamps. And they even do hologram technology to stop counterfeiters. Because they've mastered all these different areas, they basically become a one-stop shop for trust.
Okay, so they've got all this cool, important tech, but does it actually make money? Well, let's take a look at the numbers, because they tell a pretty fascinating story of growth and, honestly, resilience. Just check out this revenue growth. Back in 2019, things were looking great. Then, 2020 happened, and like a lot of companies, they took a major hit when the pandemic shut down travel and slowed down transactions. But here's the amazing part. Look at that rebound. By 2023, they hadn't just recovered, they had absolutely smashed their old numbers, soaring way past 2 trillion rupiah. That's not just a comeback, that's some serious growth. And that kind of performance isn't a one-off thing. I mean, a 22% jump in net profit like they had in 2016, that's impressive. It shows they've got a consistent track record, which, let's be honest, is absolutely essential when your entire business is built on trust. Speaking of trust, it's not just about what you make, it's about how you run your business. And for a company like JTPE, this all comes down to something called Good Corporate Governance, or GCG. You can basically think of it as the official rulebook for how to operate ethically and responsibly.
And at JTPE, their GCG is built on these 5 core principles. And they make perfect sense, right? I mean, think about it. If you're the one handling the data for millions of passports or bank cards, you have to be transparent. You have to be accountable for your actions. You have to be responsible, independent, and fair. These aren't just buzzwords on a corporate poster. For them, this is literally their license to operate.
Okay, so we've covered where they've been and how they operate today. But honestly, the most exciting part of this whole story is where they're going next. Look, the world is moving from paper to pixels, and JTPE gets that. They've made this really smart, critical transformation because they realize they're not really in the printing business anymore. They're in the trust business. And in today's world, that means you have to be an integrated digital security company.
And you can totally see this shift happening in the products they're making. They're putting electronic polycarbonate pages in passports. That's physical security meeting digital. They're using RFID tags to help brands fight counterfeit products.
They're right at the heart of digital payments, making and personalizing chip cards for Visa and MasterCard. And now, they're even getting into purely digital stuff like verified electronic signatures. Every one of these innovations is another step deeper into our digital future.
When you step back and look at it, companies like JTPE are really the invisible architects of trust in our modern world. And as our lives, our money, our very identities become more and more digital, the whole idea of what security even means is changing. It kind of leaves you with a big question, doesn't it? As our lives go fully digital, what will security even look like? And who are the next unseen companies out there building it for us?